Okay, so welcome, Joy, and hopefully others will show up. This is the last webinar of the entire quarter. So the plan today is we'll do a very brief discussion of the part of chapter 13 that we're doing in this class. We don't do most of chapter 13, but we do a little bit. And then it's all about the final exam review, talking about how to study, what it's about, what to expect, what are the resources that you can find that I've put on the modules and other places you might don't find things, and just strategies. And that's the plan. I want to mention a few things. One is something very weird happened. I know it happened to you, Joy. On the last discussion forum post assignment, so I'm pretty sure, Joy, you had that issue, didn't you? Where you posted and it disappeared. There are about 4 or 5 of you that had that, and I have no idea. It was like mysterious. I went to our distance education person. She looked at it. She has no idea. She's never seen it before. So I actually reported it to the Canvas corporate people. So maybe they'll figure it out. Hopefully it doesn't happen again ever, because I don't get it. I copied that, exactly copied from last quarter, and it didn't happen last quarter. Nothing changed. So again, sorry about that. But I definitely didn't do that to be mean. It's just happened. Technology does weird things. So I finished grading those. I wanted to get those done with before I started grading the projects. Now we got some people coming. Wow, it's exactly the same time. Hey, Sierra. Hey, Ozzy. Thanks for coming. So I want to mention I have not started the projects yet because I wanted to get through the discussion assignment grading first. That takes a day. And then the projects I'll start tomorrow. And hopefully I'll finish those by Wednesday. So in terms of my schedule, that's what I'm going to be doing the next few days. And Sierra, in fact, I have in my hand both of your tests. She's in both classes and they both have tests coming. So that's the plan that I'm going to be working on. So are there any questions about anything that you might have before I start talking quickly about chapter 13? Any questions? Not seeing any or hearing any, but feel free, because that's a big point of these webinars, is for you to be able to ask questions live. Okay, that's a good question. Is there any extra credit? And the answer is no. No. The reason for that is there's kind of a curve. So extra credit would just be part of the curve, which means that it wouldn't be extra credit, it would be an assignment. Does that make sense? So that's why I don't do extra credit. It doesn't make any sense, because then if you didn't do it, then that's the same thing as losing points. So it's not really extra. Okay, so there's nothing on the final like the midterm, just the midterm had that. Okay, so that's just a point. And I want to mention something else that a lot of people ask. The final exam, the first word of that is final. So when you're done taking that final exam, the course is over. So don't even ask for extra credit after you take your final exam. The class is over. At that point, I grade your final, and then that's the grade you get. Okay, in terms of not the final grade, but you get the grade in the course when the final is put in with everything else you've done. Okay, and that's how it is. And the bad news is, I think the class ends on Thursday officially, next Thursday, which means that I'll have it in Canvas, but it won't help you because you won't be able to get into Canvas to look at your final exam score. Sorry about that. It's one of these college things. So the way you'll find out how you did is you'll have to be a little patient, wait till the next week, and then it should be on your transcripts. Okay, and at that point, there's nothing to do about it anyway, so just be patient is all I can tell you. But again, the Canvas closes up, and then you won't be able to see anything. Okay, so Sierra says, curious how much of the final will contain definitions. I'm not gonna ever ask you directly, define this word. It's not how I do things. And you haven't ever had anything like that on anything we've done in class, have you, Sarah? Okay. On the other hand, you will have lots of problems, probably every one of them, where there's going to be a statistics word. And if you don't know what that statistics word means, you won't be able to do the problem. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Sierra. Does that answer your question? So instead of asking you, for example, what is the definition of a type 1 error, I would give you a scenario, and then I would say, and if there was a type 1 error, what damage would be done? That's what you have to know, but not the definition of something. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, but if you don't know the definitions of the words of any of them, then you have no chance of this test, because language is a big part of this class. Hopefully you've noticed that. Okay, it's always worth being prepared. But again, if you don't know the words, you can't do it. So it's not memorizing specific words in a definition, but really understanding the language of statistics. And vice versa, you have to know how to use words in your sentences. So both go on. Any other questions? Any other questions before I jump into, and by the way, we will have a full review of the final. But any questions about anything else before I go to chapter 13, which probably only takes 10 or 15 minutes to talk about. Okay, let's go and talk about chapter 13. Chapter 13 goes and does something that we haven't done before. So what have we left out in this class in terms of data types, in terms of hypothesis testing? What don't we know how to do yet? And there's a few things, but there's one main thing we haven't touched. Okay, how many questions? I'll do that later in terms of the details of the test. So I'll answer that later. But what haven't we done? What haven't we done yet in hypothesis testing? What kind of thing might you be doing a test about that we haven't done yet? Any thoughts? So let's go through what we've done, because it's also a good review for the final. The first ones we did was hypothesis test for a single proportion, a yes-no question, population proportion. Hypothesis test for a single mean, which is quantitative. We talked about how to compare two proportions, how to compare two means. We've also talked about how to compare several proportions using chi-squared. We've looked at qualitative data, okay, and that was, again, more chi-squared. We've also done regression analysis with the hypothesis test for correlation. So what's left? What haven't we done yet? Case study, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but pretty much everything we do is case studies. That's what data is all about, is the data from a case study. But what specific type of test? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Give you a couple seconds to think about it. Not seeing y'all jump in, so maybe I'll tell you. We haven't dealt with many means. So if you have like 4 different populations and you want to compare them with a question that is quantitative, we don't know how to do that. We only know how to do 2. Does that make sense? But if we want to say, is there a difference amongst ethnicities, say in, I don't know, how many units they're taking at this college? And the ethnicities are maybe Hispanic and Caucasian, and they're African American and Asian and other. So there's a bunch of ethnicities. It's a quantitative question, and we want to say if there's any differences. Does that make sense to everybody? And we haven't dealt with that yet, and that's our last thing to do. So let me pop in, and I'm gonna do it by example. So I'm gonna share my desktop, or share my Paint, actually, is what I'm sharing. Always takes forever to find it. Yeah. Okay, so here we got it. And we have a question. Suppose a study was done to analyze the racial differences for the distance in miles that people live from the nearest public library. Okay. Notice the survey question is, how many miles do you live from the nearest public library? And let's see if you can tell me, how many miles do you live from the nearest public library? Pop it in the chat box. Okay, so 6.5. I'm at 2. Okay, and I'm not sure, Ozzy, if you can type or not, but hopefully you live a certain number of miles from the public library, somewhere between 0 and 1,000,000. But the point is, this is quantitative. So it's a quantitative study, but we want to look at differences in several populations, in this case 4. Any questions on the question? All right, so there's a few things we have to look at. One is a null and alternative hypothesis. Now this one's a little different than we've seen. Remember in chapters 9 and 10, I have to get the numbers right. We always had symbols, right? And then we moved to chapter 11. And when we moved to chapter 11, we always had words. And then we went back to chapter 12, and we always had symbols. Any guess on this one? For the hypotheses? What do you think? Not seeing, I'll jump in. Think we're going to have words or symbols for the hypotheses? Joy says words. What do you think, Sierra? Not jumping in. Okay. Turns out both. Okay, so whatever you said, it would have been right. Should have tried. Okay, so let's go and see what we get. So I'm going to write down an H1. And actually, I think I want to do it with a brush because it's going to have some mu's in there. And that's because we're talking about population means. And population means you use from mu's. So H naught is that mu for the whites is equal to mu for the blacks is equal to mu for the Hispanics equals mu for the others. So the population mean for each of the 4 populations are equal to each other. Okay, so now comes the part that can be a little challenging. We need to write H1. What is the opposite? Okay, so what is the opposite of all 4 means are equal to each other? So in other words, what's the complement of that? But be very specific. And maybe you could be specific as I'm getting fonts and stuff right. So what is not equal to? It's not just not equal to is all you have that one symbol. That's not going to do it. You have to have more symbols or words. H1, start there. Any thoughts? So again, what's the complement? What's the other side of the coin to they are all equal, maybe in words? Negative population mean of each population are not equal to each other. Okay, it turns out we need to be more specific. So it's not that they're all not equal to each other. You can have some equal and some not equal to. And then that's still not having them all equal. Is that clear? So the complement of them all being equal is that at least two of them are not equal to each other. And that's why you put these in words. At least two population means are not equal to each other. Which is not, it's different than saying all of them are different from each other. You could have three of them the same and then one of them's different, for example. You could have all different. You could have two equal, two others equal, but these pairs aren't equal to each other. There's lots of ways of them not being equal to each other. Any questions at all on this idea? And you just mastered doing symbols, but there are symbols for H naught. So you're good with that. Okay. All right. So we now have H naught, we have H1, and now you're used to this. How do you think we're going to do this by hand to find a p-value? And if you think so, then you really haven't been paying attention to everything in this class. We're going to use a calculator. So what I want to do is I want to pull out my calculator and share that with you. So let's pop the calculator out. And let's go here, and here, and here. It's whatever we had last week. Okay, so the first thing we do is we go to Stat, and we're going to go to Edit. And here we need L1, L2, L3, and L4. We need all four of them because we have four different populations. So I got to clear everything out. Be nice if there was a clear everything out button, but there isn't. Okay, so now I just type in, L1 will be my whites, which is 15. And then 4, and then 11, and then 9, 3, and 2. And then we have 12, 1, 6, and 6. And then we had 9, 17, and then 5, and then 14, and then 7, and 1. And then we had 18, 11, 2, and 8. Okay, and the good news is all the calculators can do this. Okay, only goodness of fit is the one that you may have to program, but this one, everyone's got it. Okay, so then we have to decide on the test. And it turns out the test to use is called ANOVA. Okay, the test we're going to use is called ANOVA. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Stat and Tests. Now, we're in the last day of class, right? Any guess on where this test is going to be? Yeah, so let's go up. And there it is, ANOVA. Any questions on this? This is actually a very different test than the rest of them in terms of the way it looks. I hit enter on the very last one, and all it does is say ANOVA. There's no menu or anything. So now what I do is I just type in our L1. So I go L1, which was second 1, and then comma, second 2 for L2, and then comma, second 3 for L3, and then comma, second 4 for L4, and I end the parentheses. Any questions so far on the calculator work? All right, now I think you know what to do. You hit enter. Okay, now you'll notice the very first thing it gives is F. Okay, and by the way, that is not, I hope, going to be your grade in the class. Okay, F does not stand for that. F is the distribution. So we've had a lot of distributions. We've had binomial distribution. We've had normal distribution. We've had t distribution. We've had uniform distribution. We've had chi-squared distribution. And this is the last one of this course, and it's called the F distribution. And so the test statistic is 1.0931 about. The p-value, I hope you all know what that means now. When they say p equal, that's the p-value. And that is 0.3806 or so. All the rest of the stuff is something that we don't have to worry about in this class. That's more for if you were to do this by hand, you'd have all these numbers. Okay, so again, the test statistic was 1.09. P-value is 0.38. I'm just going to do 2 decimals for now. So now I go ahead and let's go back to the question. So notice that, let's type this in, the p-value. Actually, I think I'm going to type it in a different spot. And type it here. Okay, so a couple things. The test statistic was F was equal to 1.0931. And the p-value was equal to 0.3806. Any questions? Okay, now I'm hoping that all of you know what you do when you have a p-value of 0.3806. Can you put it in the chat box or tell me? Since we've been doing these. Did I do a typo? Okay, well, let's just pretend. I don't want to start over again on it. What's more important is you know how to do this. So sorry about this. Yeah, so what you do is you fail to reject the null hypothesis. So what we're going to do is we fail to reject the null hypothesis. No, didn't work. One more try. And if you fail to reject the null hypothesis, we should know the words to put in. There is statistically insignificant evidence to determine whether or not. And then we could just retype H1 or H0. I'm going to type in H1 because it's in words already. At least 2 of the population means are not equal to each other. Okay. You could also say, instead of if you're doing the whether or not, you could say whether or not all of them are equal. It means the same thing. And again, I apologize if I did a typo. I'm kind of working on to get to the final review, so I typed in fast without looking. Any questions at all on this so far? Do you notice I left some space over to the left? Okay. Okay. There's a reason. I want to look at one more thing that's really important. This looks pretty easy, doesn't it? So p-value is still high, so we're okay. Okay, but this looks pretty easy, doesn't it? What do you think? Yeah, so here's the hard part, okay? And not necessarily for this class, but in the real world. The hard part is the assumptions that you need to make in order to use this test. And there's some pretty strong ones. The first thing is what I did was completely wrong. And hopefully you know there's something wrong with this, that we should never do statistics on something that looks like this. How come? The ton of stuff, none of that is necessary for this class. All that matters is you need to have F and the p-value. And your 89 should give you those two things, right? Okay, so what's wrong? But what's wrong with what I did? Why should you never do what I did in the real world? And I'm hoping all of you know the problem, because there's something that's come up a lot in this class. I'm not seeing any of you replying. Ages? I'm not sure what ages mean. I don't think there was ages in this at all, actually. Yeah, this is distance from the library. It's not quite. Okay, now look at our sample sizes. For example, what's the sample size for the blacks? 4. Is that ever okay in statistics? Hopefully you know, never enough. Okay, a sample size of 4 is ridiculous. I only did that so I didn't have to type much in the calculator. In the real world, you need a bigger sample size. So let me talk about what you need. And the idea is you need to make sure the sample size is large enough so you can use the central limit theorem on each, and you can say they're all normal. So let me start typing in the requirements. So the one is all sampling distributions are normal. And I'll write approximately normal. So in this case, you have to have at least 31 actually, of each of the different samples. So that would be, what, 124 people you'd have to survey. Okay, another one that you probably wouldn't guess is that the standard deviations must be approximately the same. Okay, and that's especially true if you have different sample sizes, which we do here. So I'm not going to get into any details on this, and what does it mean to be close to equal? That's advanced statistics. We can't go there. But you should know that these are some things you have to have. The approximately normal, that we've learned, because that's central limit theorem. The other two we've also learned, and the next one is they're independent. So independently selected. Okay, so that's usually not that hard to do. But you don't want to do like couples of mixed races or something. I don't know, because that wouldn't be independent. And then the fourth one is very hard to do, but we've learned it in a big way. What do you always have to do when you collect data to make sure so that you can do statistics? The very first week of class we talked about it. This is important because, again, you have a final coming. So even the first week is important. So what do you always have to be careful of when you collect data? You had to do it in Project 1 too, also. Any thoughts? I'm not seeing it. Okay. Sampling must be unbiased. So random sampling works, but it must be an unbiased sampling technique. If you don't represent the population because of bias, you can never do any statistics, period. Is that clear? So those are the 4 big requirements, and those are tough. Number 3 is not that hard, but 1, 2, and 4 are really tough to get. 1 means huge sample sizes. 2 means you need to take another statistics class to learn how to do this. And number 4 is a big headache, a lot of work to do. Any questions at all on this example and what ANOVA is? Actually, I haven't typed in ANOVA because that was important. Let's put it somewhere, I think in red, because it's important. It's called ANOVA. And ANOVA stands for Analysis of Variance. You should have no idea why they call it that. That's one you just got to trust me. Even though we're deciding whether means are different or the same, it's called Analysis of Variance because of the mathematics behind it. Any questions at all on ANOVA? And that's all we're doing from Chapter 13. Chapter 13 has some other stuff, but we only cover this. And one example is basically like every other example. Okay, so if you're not sure if the standard deviations are the same, approximately the same, then you need to take another statistics class. So that's the bad news. We're at the end of the class, there's nothing left to say, I'm done. So you need to take an advanced statistics class, and there are tests for multiple populations of standard deviations to see if they're approximately equal. There's a test for everything, by the way. We've been focusing all quarter on means and proportions, but there's tests for standard deviations, for medians, you name it. There's a test for everything. So we're not doing that test. Sound good, Sarah? But someday you might, okay, if you take more statistics. Okay, and you could ask the same thing about normal. How do you know if they're normal? Okay, how do you know if the original population is normal because you have a small sample size? Then that's what you need. There's a test for that too, which we're not doing. Any other questions before I move on, in a big way, move on? Any other questions? Yeah, so you have to assume they're approximately equal, especially if the sample sizes are different. So you need to have the right side. Yeah, I want you to know the requirements, but not necessarily know how to decide if they're true or not. Does that make sense, Joy? So I could ask you to list, the requirements, and you just list that for. That I could ask you to do. But I will not ask you to decide if the standard deviations are approximately equal. You just have to tell me that you're supposed to. Sound good? You're not supposed to know how to do it. You're just supposed to know that it's supposed to happen. And the main reason I want you to know this is so that when you get into, like, say, an advanced psychology class, you be careful about using ANOVA instead of saying, well, I took it in elementary statistics, it was easy, I'm just going to do it. So I want to give you a warning. just doing it needs another class in statistics. Sound good? So that's really what I want you to learn, is that there's more to it than what we've said, but you're not going to learn how to do the more to it. Okay, let's talk about the final now, if that's okay, unless you have more questions about ANOVA. Okay, every one of these looks very similar. You might have a p-value that's low, and then, of course, hopefully you would know, instead of insignificant evidence, you would have statistically significant evidence, but you've seen that before. And then you would say to conclude that, and you just restate H1 if the p-value is small. But I'm hoping that y'all know how to deal with p-values and hypothesis testing. All right, so let's move on. I want to reshare my desktop, and I'm going to go to Canvas. And oh, in fact, before I do that, I have double screen. I want to make sure it's all on the screen that I'm using, or things get weird. All right, so now I can share. Let me find it. It is right there. Okay, so hopefully you can see. This is just what you're used to. Yeah, chapter 13 is we don't do all of it. That's it. We're done. That's all you need to know. That's why I don't need to spend much time on it. ANOVA is deep, but we don't do the deep part of it. We only do the quick and easy part of it. Okay, and Joy, your question, because now we're talking about it. The answer is no, because your grammar's wrong. I posted this shell in December. Just no one noticed it because no one cared about the final. Now you're caring about the final. So it's actually been posted since December. Okay, and of course you weren't on the Canvas in December, but since January for all of you. But I made this in December. Okay, but you weren't on January. Okay, so I want to remind you a couple things. Okay, so the first thing that's really important is the final must be taken by next Wednesday. And next Wednesday is March 27th. Okay? There are no late exams allowed. Okay? I turn in my grades, and then it's over. So it must be taken on March 27th. I mean, if you don't take it on March 27th, it's a 0 and you need to retake the class, okay? It could be an incomplete, but that's sometimes worse. So you must take it by March 27th. There is a quiz. Let me go to it. It's an easy quiz. It's the same one basically you did for the midterm, except that it's even easier. So let me show you. That's in week 11 because that's where we are now. Well, it has to be done with a proctor. Most proctors don't work till midnight. So you have to arrange it. If you can find a proctor that's open at night, that's fine. But it has to be done by March 27th at midnight. But don't think that you can find a proctor who's going to hang out till midnight. So Sierra, I know you take it at our college. I think they close at like 7 maybe. Not sure. It might be 6, but you'll call them. You'll talk. In fact, that's what I'm about to talk about. So this week's assignment, you will see final exam information. This won't be what it looks like in a second. When I hit preview, that's what it looks like. There are not a lot of questions. What day will you be taking the final exam? It must be taken by March 27th. Okay? You can take it before the 26th, the 25th, whenever. But but it has to be taken by the 27th. Question 2, where will you be taking the exam? And it says if you will be taking it with the same proctor as you took the midterm, you can just state same and you're done. Otherwise, you need to let me know the name, email, and website of the proctor. Easy enough? So this is required. Just to note, it's just 2 questions, really quick and easy, but you need to do it, and you need to do it by this Wednesday. Okay, if you don't do it by this Wednesday, I deduct 5% off your final exam score, and why would you want to do that? Okay, so get it done. Okay, so I recommend you contacting your proctor. Again, if it's the same one, you should still contact your proctor and make sure they can do it at the time you want done. Okay, so especially LTCC, because we're in finals week next week and they get busy. So don't assume they can handle the time you need until you call them or walk over there or email them and get it set up. Any questions on the proctoring? And the rules are exactly the same as they were for the midterm. Okay. Do you have a time? Uh-oh. Did you hear that? Well, hopefully I'm not going to smell smoke. I'm gonna stick in here a little while. Do you hear what I'm hearing? Sorry if it's annoying. We got a fire alarm going right now. We'll see how long I can hang. Hoping it stops. Never had this happen during a webinar. Bummer. Okay, I'm going to tell you a few things. I hope we don't have to leave and come back in 15 minutes. But let me quickly, I'm hoping this stops. Please stop. Let me go back. I hope we don't have to call this short because of this. Okay, so in week 12, or it's actually even not even called the week 12, it's called the comprehensive final exam, comprehensive final module. I put a bunch of things on this. Okay. The first one is just a little video, little motivational video. The second is a practice final. It's not the same thing as a study guide, it's a practice final. So if you click that, that's actually a web page. It's got a lot of things to practice on. The next are review applets. If you click that, I have 2 things that are really important. Can you still hear me, by the way? Apologize for this horrible alarm. I may have to leave, but you guys aren't on campus, so I'll take the risk. So if you click on practice classifying statistics problems, let me show you something. This is your final exam. This is page 1. Page 1 is this. Oh, you're lucky you can only slightly hear the alarm. It is ringing horribly in my ears. I'm going crazy right now. But this is page 1 of the final exam, and page 1 is what you're looking at right now. Except it's not in green. What you want to do is hit select all. We're at the final exam and you want to practice everything. Then you hit submit, and this is going to give you a classification questions, just like this, for question number 1. Your question number 1 is going to look just like this. It's going to have different examples. There's an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Okay? Practice these. How many should you do? How many should you do? What do you think? How many? Because you do it and you try again. Any thoughts? As many as possible. I don't know about that because that could be thousands. Okay? I would do as many until you get them right. Okay? When you start getting them all right, then you're done. If you get 10 in a row right, you're good. Maybe even 9 out of 10, you're good. Okay? So I like Tammy's answer until you know it. And you know it when you get them right. Any questions on that? Just a note, I just found out the hard way. This is my most popular site of my entire website that I have. I have thousands of things on my website. When we went down, I got emails from all over the country saying, what happened? Why did you take this down? I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, our whole college went down. And it ruined a lot of people all over the country. This is used everywhere. Okay, in AP statistics and statistics class, because everyone loves this. Okay, so this is really important. Do this. Okay, guessing isn't going to work well because there's too many choices, and you might get one right out of 8, which is not a good score. So do well. Another one that you should practice is the next one, which is the true-false questions. Again, you select all, and then work on the true-false questions. Keep working until you're getting them right. That's question number 2. Looks like this. Okay, not green though. Okay, and when you hit it, true or false, it'll tell you, hey, we got it right. Read the answer, by the way, make sure that your thoughts process was right. Because you got a 50-50 chance of getting lucky, but again, it doesn't help to get lucky in practice. You really want to understand it. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm going crazy with this alarm. All right, so next, what we do is, if you go back, I kind of want to show in context again. We just looked at these guys, the review applets. The last is what, I think it might have been what Joy was asking. Is there going to be a structure thing? A shell, and here it is. So this is the shell for the final exam. Notice number 1 and number 2, I already talked about that. Yeah, I know, Sarah. Sierra, you're confused because in statistics, there's no explanations required. In calculus, there were. So sorry if I confuse you. Calculus, I want you to be able to prove things. So no explanations. Circle true or false, and that's the end of it. Don't leave any of those blank, though, because you're stupid. You get a 50-50 chance of getting it right if you try. You have a 0 chance of getting it right if you don't. And it doesn't take a long time to circle something. But try, still see if you can get it. Don't just give up. Okay, let me go there so you can see. Question number 3. One big difference, by the way, is I give a lot more space on this. Okay, the shell is short in terms of no space, but you can have space. It's many pages. Question number 3 is a hypothesis test. I'll let you read through those, but I asked typical questions with hypothesis test. You had to do this on the midterm also. Question number 4. Question number 4 has 4 parts. You had to do this on the midterm, almost exactly the same. It's going to be a different initial paragraph, though. Question number 5, I'm not going to tell you much. Just comes from chapters 3, 4, or 5. Question number 6 is going to be a confidence interval question. Question number 7, another hypothesis test. There's a lot of hypothesis tests on this test because that's half the class. Question number 8 comes from 2, 3, or 4. Question number 9 is from chapter 12. It's a regression analysis question. Okay? You got to find R squared, give its interpretation in the context of the survey, find the equation of the line, make a prediction, make sure you interpret the slope, make sure you interpret the y-intercept if it is applicable, and then do a hypothesis test in part E. And then question number 10 and question number 11, more hypothesis tests. Okay? These are a little shorter, so I write it this way. Not as many long interpretation stuff. But there is one. You need to have the interpretation. And that is a test. I want to show you some tools to be able to be successful in the test. Besides the categorization and the true-false applets, one that you should all do is in week 8, I posted the key to the midterm. Okay, this is week 8, not under the final module, because that happened at the midterm. Look at it. Okay, for example, I already told you that this question number 1, you're going to have something very similar to it on it. And here's the answers. Make sure you know how to do these kind of answers. Okay, don't memorize the numbers because they're not going to be the same numbers. Any questions on that? I hope I don't get in trouble because I'm not really supposed to be here. But I don't want to ruin like our final exam review. But I may have to cut it a little short. So fortunately, no one goes into this corner, but I'm not really supposed to be in this spot. Any questions on that as a good tool? Something to look at. Okay. Oh yeah, all the other stuff was under the final module, the last module. So I just noticed that. If you go again to home, home goes to the modules. It's called comprehensive final, is what it's called. And it has those 3 pieces. Other things you should do or recommend is go to the discussions. And for example, in regression analysis, go over here and really review my model analysis, because you're going to have to do this stuff and you're going to have this kind of wording. Okay, especially if you did not get a good score on the most recent post. Okay, you need to be able to write all this stuff out, because you're going to have a test question. I told you on regression analysis, it's going to look very similar. Okay, it won't be about the bear community, but you're going to have a regression analysis. Okay, we're going to have to do all of this stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, so go through and make sure you can do this writing like I have written here. Don't just read it, but make sure you can write it. Okay, and then again, under discussions, there's lots of these. Every week we do one, because the final exam has a lot of writing. So make sure you can do that writing. And I have models for kind of the main points. Any questions on that? Same rules, by the way, for the final as for the midterm. It's 2 hours. You can take in you must take in your calculator, and you're not allowed to use a smartphone, not allowed to use a smartwatch or a computer, just a calculator. Obviously, pencil, pen is fine. And you write, you do it, and then you hope everything goes well. You turn it in at the end of 2 hours, and then I'll grade it within a few days. Okay, any questions? Any questions or anything you want me to go through? Again, if it looks like I'm being driven crazy, that's because we got an alarm behind me. It's not going off. Sure hope the building's not on fire. But there is snow all around. The forest isn't on fire. Any questions at all? What I need to do is I need to give you the final. Actually, I don't need any share. I can just do it. I'm just going to do annotate. So this is the last secret word of the course. Will we have regression analysis anywhere near as in depth of the discussion? The answer is yes. That's why you need to practice it. Okay, so the secret word is thank you. Okay, and again, thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for all having a good attitude. I've had times when it wasn't so good, but everyone in the class, I don't have any like people I just look forward to having the class over so I can get rid of you. I don't have any people like that. You're all nice people. Good to have nice people. I hope you all pass. I want you to. I want to help you. I will be. You're not getting any updates. I don't have my phone with me. I don't do that when I'm on my webinar. So Tammy, you're not getting updates on the drill? Really? It's happening. I'm hearing it big time. So again, I want to help you out. I'll be checking the Q&A forum. Okay, we're done with the project discussion forum. I usually move that as soon as I'm done grading it. The concluding discussion will be the easiest one of the entire quarter. If you can't do that, please don't wait till after Thursday. I want to give everybody 10s. Okay? And this one you could reply to everyone if you want. Okay? But I want to give everyone 10s on this one. This is a freebie, but you have to do it. Okay? So please make sure you do that one by Thursday. I would do the whole thing by Thursday. You could just focus on the final. You also have chapter 13 to do on Sunday, but it's a short, easy one. Your focus is on the final exam. Post on the Q&A forum any questions you might have. Any questions? So I'll answer any questions, but I just don't want to get in too much trouble or die because of some like fire, but I don't think we're having one. Because I don't smell smoke. I don't see any flames out the window. But are there any questions at all about anything before we call this, it's a weird last moment with the fire alarm going, but before we call this a very end of the last webinar. Okay, and I'll be happy to chat with you live or whatever if you want to, or definitely Q&A forum always works. I'm still going to keep my office hours. Tuesday might be a little different because I'm giving a final during, I think, one of them. If you're struggling to understand what test to use, couple things. One is that this week's long video goes over that, because I know that's hard and it's also important. The other is go through a bunch of those practice problems on finding the test to use. And then if you don't understand it, it has explanations, but if you don't understand it, post on the Q&A forum and I'll help you with it. Could you do an example of chi-squares on the Q&A forum later? Yeah, if you post what type you want, I can do that. There's also, by the way, I didn't mention it, but the homeworks are still available. You could go look at them, and those have examples too. And they're written out. They don't ask you to write. They ask you to pick a multiple choice, but the answers are written. Does that make sense, Sierra? So you could definitely look at those. There is no extra credit. Yeah, there's no extra credit. Okay, but sorry about that, Katie. And in fact, maybe I'll unshare my desktop so I can see everybody. There we go. Because we have some people that I didn't see at the very beginning. Any other questions before I do what I'm supposed to do? And I was supposed to leave a long time ago. I don't usually break rules, but I really wanted to not cut this short, like say that we're not going to have our review because of the fire alarm. I think that would be awful. Don't you agree? Okay. I don't smell smoke though, and I'm really close to the exit if I need to run. Okay, but I will stay until you're gone, and then I'm out of here really fast. Any other questions? So again, if you're done, you can log out, and then I'll say goodbye to everyone with this alarm going. It's still going. Any other questions? Katie, Tammy, Joy? Okay, good night. And again, thank you all for a good quarter, by the way. And I wish you all success on this final exam. I hope it goes well. I want everyone to do well. Any last minute questions? I see Tammy say good night. All right, well, good night, everyone. And for those who are watching this as an archive webinar, sorry about the alarm in the background, but I'm supposed to go. And thank you all. Post on the Q&A forum any questions. I'll be checking often, so I will answer it. Not every moment, but definitely every day, usually several times a day. So have a great one. Have happy studies, and I'm here for you. So have a good one.